welcome to a brand new season of Circle Time, the Early Years podcast. I'm Glenn Denny and welcome back. Brilliant first guest for our new season. This week, we've got somebody who's been involved with running STEM sessions for young children for over 9 years. Her brand new book, 50 Fantastic Ideas for STEM Activities, is going to be published about midway through 2025, but you can pre-order it now, which is quite exciting. And yes, I have already done that. Welcome to Circle Time, Sandra Beale.
Hi, Glenn.
Hi, brilliant. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. So you don't have an early years background, do you? So how did you get involved in this in the first place?
So when my middle son was 9 months old, I wanted to do something different with him. I didn't want to do the same run-of-the-mill toddler groups, etc., etc. And I just started doing these science experiments just with him, just to entertain him. And then my friends were like, you know, what's going on here? A baby doing science experiments? That's completely unheard of. And then they wanted to participate, and they did, and it grew bigger and bigger through word of mouth. And it was all done in my kitchen, all right here, you know, with the same background behind me. And then in 2019, the BBC got wind of it, and they got in touch and they said, science for babies, absolutely impossible. I was like, no, come over and have a look. So they came over and they were completely amazed at seeing these babies with pipettes and, you know, really young children, 18 months, you know, 2-year-olds and much younger, with pipettes and various other equipment, you know, creating little mini explosions of vinegar and bicarb and, you know, that sort of thing. And they were astonished. They couldn't believe it. And they were amazed at how focused these very young children were. And so it's pretty much grown, and it's in lots of newspapers and magazines nowadays. It's been on Early Years TV several times on the BBC. It's been on BBC Tiny Happy People. And then as you mentioned earlier, I've written a book. So it's lots and lots of experiments. And in that book, there's about 50, but I've done tons of experiments. And I tend to let the children take the experiment and play with it and create their own experiment from it, which is really great. I mean, there's such a lot of stuff that comes out of a young child. You just have to give them that opportunity, because they are naturally curious, and science and all aspects of STEM, it feeds into that curiosity.
It really does. I mean, children are naturally curious anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So allowing them that opportunity. But I mean, something you were saying there, and it stuck in my mind there, that you're saying that you set this thing up and then you see where they go with it. And I think, isn't that true of science anyway?
It is.
That's how all big experiments and discoveries happen.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. I mean, so recently we've had a lot of very young children come through the door. We had a 14-week-old baby. She's now about 16 months, but she started when she was 14 weeks. So that is roughly about 3-4 months old. And I did these experiments with her. She sat and she watched these experiments. She didn't take her eyes off it for even a second. She's been coming every single Monday to my sessions. And then quite recently, I did this hovercraft experiment, which is a CD, a Rinse-Aid lid cap, and blue tack and a balloon. And you have to blow. I had laid it all out in front of her. And because she'd seen me do it a few times, she anticipated what was going to happen next. So she started putting the balloon on top of the CD in anticipation of what the next step was, all on her own. And her mum was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, you know, this is so amazing. This proves the point that young children, really young children, are absorbing so much. They're like sponges. they absorb, and they take in such a lot of information just by observing, and obviously doing. So yeah, so that was really brilliant. And then we had a little boy who started coming when he was 2. He's 4 now. And I gave him an experiment quite recently. We were doing catapults, and I said, we're going to make this catapult out of craft sticks, and then we're going to ping a pom-pom through a hoop, just so like a basketball kind of thing. And I said, we'll create a hoop out of pipe cleaner, and we'll put it on the table, and then he had the brainwave all on his own of attaching the hoop to a magnetic wand, and obviously it attaches because the hoop, the pipe cleaner, is made is metal, and it attaches, and all out of his own, nothing to do with me. He decided, he said, oh, I'm going to do it this way. And I said, that's brilliant. So a lot of children, and I've seen this throughout, my almost 10 years of doing these sessions, where children sort of take an idea and they carry on with it. They go ahead with it. And then they start thinking of solutions that are not conventional solutions. They think of, solutions that, typically out of the box solutions, which is basically what the end result is. That's what I want all the children who come to my sessions to start to independently think of ways of, being creative, of coming to, coming to a solution in different ways. It doesn't have to be in a particular orderly fashion. They can come whichever way they want to, because that's how science is. You don't have to follow, if one way doesn't work, you try a different way. So there's no, case of failure as such. And which is something which I also try and explain to the parents, because there are all sorts of parents, as you can imagine, who come through the doors. There's some parents who go like, oh no, this can't work, this won't work, this, you can't do this. And it's sometimes you have to educate the parents too, and say, look, just let the child, just let them experience it. And the parents then experience it for themselves too. And they see that, yes, these things can be done. These things can happen. And it's just amazing. It's like a massive learning experience for me as well, as well as the grown-ups who come to the sessions. So and I love what I do.
I was going to say, I mean, there's a real passion there when you're talking about it, and I think as well, like, I mean, if you're not still learning something, would you still be doing this?
I mean, it's a continuous learning process. I mean, I'm constantly learning, because as you know, every single child is different. Even siblings are different. So every single child, I mean, all my sessions are child-led. Everything I do in this house is child-led, even for my own children, very child-led. So when you have a new child who comes into the house, they may not want to come and sit around the table and start an experiment. That's absolutely fine. They decide sometimes that they want to go and play with all the toys, and it's like, fine, you go and play, you do what you want. Sometimes they sort of dip and dive. They come to the table, they kind of look and see what's happening. They kind of participate, they leave, then they go off. By the time they've come sort of like third or fourth time, they're sitting at the table, focusing for a good 10 minutes, which is incredible for a child who is, between 15 to 2. I mean, you wouldn't expect a child of that age to be focused at all, but they are. They get so stuck into the experiment. And usually, I mean, it's very messy. All the experiments are extremely messy. I kind of, because children like playing with water, they like playing with, colors. So lots of food coloring goes in. They like balloons, and, I kind of use all sorts of things. And I kind of keep offering them solutions sometimes. And so there's one of the things which is quite messy. We do this what's call it with bubble wrap painting, which is great fun. Kids love it. It's the bubble wrap painting, shaving foam, bubble wrap, food coloring, or piece of paper, stick it down and go tap tap tap, and you pull off the bubble wrap, and you have all these really interesting peaks and things, indentations and peaks of the shaving foam on the paper, which is great. And sometimes I ask the children what would happen if you add a bit of bicarb to that, and then drop a bit of vinegar. And that gets them really excited, because then they suddenly see the colors all sort of erupting. So it's just quite exciting, and they get really excited by that. And so sometimes they go like, oh, can we add more things? And it's like, yes, let's add sand. Let's see what happens to sand. Let's see what happens to salt. Let's see what what happens to oil, for example. It's a colossal mess, but there's a whole lot of kind of things that are happening, all sorts of reactions happening there. And children can see the different things that can happen together when you put two, 3 or 4 things together, and the fun that they can have. And then they want to put their hands in it, and it's like, yes, put your hands in it. Don't put your hands in your mouth afterwards, but some of them do, but it's okay. It's not anything. But yes, I mean, it's just a lot of fun. And yeah, I love it, and I guess their parents like it too. And I think most parents are quite happy it's not their house, it's my house.
I was just going to say, I think that's the key bit, is like, it's not their house, it's fine.
Yes, exactly.
But I think that's the bit as well. Like, I mean, I'm a big believer as well that a child cannot learn unless they're pulling apart or making them, like, they've got to be fully immersed in it. And I think
absolutely
what you're talking about there is a full immersion into the world of science.
Yes.
And you're not telling them what to do. They're discovering, and you're just there to scaffold and and kind of maybe direct a little question or two.
Slightly give a slight structure to to where they might be heading. But I just sort of watch quite often. I want to see, I'm myself, I'm curious to see what would happen. There was this one time we made these lava lamps, which as you know, it's oil and water and what's it called, Alka-Seltzer. And then I thought, what would happen if we added something else, another ingredient? And then the children were like, oh, can we put water beads? I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's see what happens. And that was amazing. We had these water beads going up and down. It looked so cool. You had water beads and clumps of color going up and popping, and the water beads coming down. And it was just like really fascinating. And then someone suggested, another child said, can we put a light in it? Like, yeah, why not? Let's put a light. So we got one of the parents to put their phone cameras, the light from their phone, turned it on, put it under the glass vase, and that was also fascinating. And it was just incredible. It was just like, wow. And even the parents were like, that's amazing. And so it's just little things like that, just kind of coming together. Of course, there are also different experiments that I do. Like, I do things like buoyancy, where I'm showing children, the sinking and floating thing. We've done things with oranges, and an orange peel is full of air pockets, which is what makes it float. If you don't have the orange peel, then it sinks. So that's quite an interesting visual experiment for children. And then again, they're learning vocabulary, because I tend to speak to the children with the correct vocabulary. I don't sort of kind of to sort of dumb it down, so to speak. I speak to them like I would speak to anybody, really. And they all understand. There's no, some people go like, oh, they can't understand. I'm like, they actually do. If a child can remember all the names of dinosaurs, they can remember things like buoyancy. They can remember things like states of matter. They can remember various other things, So, and I found that out too. When my children started reception, they went into class talking about buoyancy and various other things, and oxidization, and the teacher was like, blimey, where's that come from? So, but it's that sort of thing, and other children have done it too. A lot of the other children who've come to the sessions, their vocabulary is quite different from children who haven't come to the sessions. And this is not me saying it, it's your parents have said it to me, the teachers have said it to me, and said, this is incredible what you're doing. And that's really what I want to do. I want to get every single young child in this country to be passionate about science, because it gives them so much. It's just amazing. And it it's a two-way thing, because they learn so much, and science also gets a lot from it, you know.
Mhm.
Because who knows, what one of these children might just be the next, I don't know, working in at NASA or something. I have no idea, but you know what I'm saying. It's just these kids take it, and they take it, and you know, they own the experiment, and it's amazing.
I think that's it as well, isn't it? It's the ownership of it. I mean,
Yeah,
there could be, I mean, we've had so many amazing scientists around us, but sometimes I think as adults, we forget that these adult scientists were actually children once upon a time. So
absolutely.
where did that, where did their interest start from? And, sessions like yours probably weren't around when Einstein was a child and things like that. But, it's amazing that, you've got, it's that fun element that hooks
Yes,
them in, isn't
yes,
it?
exactly. It's a case of like, what I try to do is to kind of get them to enjoy it,
Mhm.
so it's kind of becomes a part of play. So when children are playing, they don't realize they're learning, but they're learning so much when they're playing.
Hmm.
It's quite a big thing then. It's just quite, it's quite huge. And when they're happy and playing, there's such a lot of learning, such a lot of building of brains going on at that point.
Hmm.
You're just like, you're just standing there and watching this happen. And there's so many times I stand and watch these kids, and I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. You know, it's just little kids, they're so tiny, so young. But it's just incredible. I mean, I've seen it in my own children. I've
Hmm.
seen it in the children who've been coming to the session since my son was a baby. He's 10 years now. And it's just incredible. It's like, wow, Um, these kids are like, they sort of like a I don't know, like a gold mine with
They really
with
are. I mean,
ideas.
there's like you were talking about much younger children than, to be fair, I anticipated as well. Like you were talking about, was it 15, 16 weeks old?
Yes,
But that's the thing. I mean, they've got, was it something like 86 billion neurons
yes, yes,
firing around
yes,
in their brains?
absolutely, yes,
Feed them, feed those
yes,
neurons.
exactly. That's exactly what I've been saying to people, that a young child is by no means not taking in anything. They are observing so much. They are sponges. And from the day they're born, they even when they're in the womb, they are listening to voices, to music, to, such a lot. And
Hmm.
they can feel even then. And it's incredible. I mean, I sometimes find it quite kind of slightly strange that a lot of people look at me as if I'm mad sometimes when I say a baby in the womb can actually pay attention to what you're saying. So when the baby
Hmm.
comes out, they can recognize your voice, for example.
Yeah.
They can recognize a song. They can recognize various things because they can hear.
Hmm.
It be muffled, but you can still hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not like you can't hear. But yes, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, when I first started and I started saying things like that to people, I think thought I was a bit slightly a bit strange. But it's true, and I think recent research has shown that babies are constantly absorbing even in the
Hmm.
womb. So there is some truth in that.
There is a lot of truth in it. I mean, there's so much brain activity going on
Yes,
before baby is born
yes,
that, like you say, it's like they recognize mum's voice. They
yes,
they can recognize familiar adults around, like
yes,
they can
yes,
recognize their siblings or their father's
yes,
voice, mother's voice.
yes,
It's all there because they're hearing
yes,
all of this
yeah.
going on, and there's all these, even down to like the food that mum eats as
Yes,
well has
exactly.
that
Yeah,
influence as well.
yes.
There's so much going
There's so
on. So
much. There's so much.
yeah.
So when people say, "Oh no, a baby doesn't understand," I always kind of turn around and say, actually they do. They absolutely do. They may not be they may not be language ready at the time, obviously,
Mhm.
because they're babies, but they do. And it's so interesting. Also, I've had children who've come. In fact, I had a little Ukrainian little boy who had come. He was about 2.5, 3, and he'd seen things that had disturbed him, and he stopped speaking. He'd come to my session because his mum heard about it, and she said, "Oh, I want him to come to your session. I said, that's fine. And he came, and I just let him have fun, play, and do all things that the other children were doing. And very slowly, he started to regain his speech. And interestingly, he started talking to somebody about the experiments he was doing. And they were amazed, and they were like, wow, he started talking again, but not just talking and anything. He's talking about experiments that he tried to put. He did these self-inflating balloons. He really liked doing the self-inflating balloons, which is again vinegar and bicarb in a balloon, and the gas that's created the balloon inflates. So it's a fun experiment. It's brilliant. And he loved it so much. That was something that kind of prompted him to speak. And I've had other children come to the sessions, children who've have had a bad start in life. And in fact, one of my friends, she adopted two little girls who were they weren't well looked after as babies, and they were having problems with talking and speaking, and they started coming to the sessions, and their vocabulary started to improve. Again, they felt comfortable enough to start talking, which my friend was like, this is so amazing. She said, I'm going to come to all your sessions. Of course, they go to a proper language therapist, because I'm not a language therapist. But it was just that little bit of like a little push for them when they came to the sessions and started doing things. And it was just so lovely just to kind of see these kids trying to, just interacting and enjoying themselves and doing all these experiments and coming up with their own experiments. And it's like, wow, I kind of feel quite emotional sometimes when I see these kids.
I can hear the passion in your voice about it as well, because it's not just about it's not just the task of introducing STEM and science and all that to children. It's what they do with it as well. And I'm getting that real vibe and connection about both of them from you as well.
Yes. But I mean, I just think little kids are amazing. I just think, wow, they're so amazing, and it's just they have such a lot to give. And it'd be nice if every single child in this country was had that opportunity to be able to enjoy this, enjoy the science in a way that they're happy to enjoy it, because every single child can do this. It's not just the children in Saffron Walden or Cambridge, but every single child, up and down the country. And I've done these workshops with a lot of early years practitioners, and they all said, yes, it's amazing. But some people find it a bit daunting to kind of do science experiments with really young children. But I mean, I've done it for so long. I find it amazing, but it's a different thing. Everyone's different, right? I mean, everyone has a different approach to kind of teaching and things. But I just think if you just talk to a child like you would talk to anybody, it's so much easier, because a child likes to be taken seriously. A small child, no matter what age they are, they like to know what's happening. They don't like to be sort of someone talking to them, standing right up there talking to them, and in like like baby talk or whatever people do. They do like to kind of feel part of. They like to be included. They like to be part of a group. And once they feel that they're secure in that, it's just it's amazing. It's just they kind of feel as if they're part of something, and they carry on. They do the things that they want to do. And and I allow them. And of course, I mean, when people come to the sessions in my house, the mother or the father or the caregiver, whoever it is, comes along with the child. The child is never. I don't allow people to just leave their children here unless they're old enough, unless they're about 7 or 8, when they can sort of deal with things themselves. But I always have the parents here. So get the parents to sit down, and the child usually is sitting on their lap. And then, so the child is very secure. Everyone's kind of happy. It's just, it's a good environment. So, which I think is really important.
Definitely. I was going to talk a little bit as well. So we mentioned right at the start that you've got your new book coming out, which is part of the 50 Fantastic Ideas series,
Yeah.
which I love this series. It's the editor's Alistair Bryce Clegg, or should I
Yes.
say Dr. Alistair Bryce Clegg as
Yes.
he is now.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a stack of them on the shelf behind me.
Oh,
I love
brilliant.
these books. So the fact that yours is coming out, and yes, I have pre-ordered it. I cannot
Oh,
wait for
brilliant.
it to come. I mean, honestly, next year can't come soon enough so I can get it. But tell us about how did it come about and what can we expect from it? I mean, I know it's going to be good because this series is good.
It is a good series, yes.
Hmm.
So when Bloomsbury got in touch with me last year and said, we've heard a lot of good things about your STEM sessions, and we'd like you to write a book, and I kind of thought about what kind of book to write, because obviously I would write books that are based on experiments. I mean, I'm not going to write a fictitious book as such,
Hmm.
And then they suggested their series, and they asked me to look through it, and I did. And I thought, yes, a STEM series would be would in keeping with their series. And so yeah, so that's how it came about. And then I got down and wrote out all these experiments, got everyone in my STEM group to participate. So a lot of the photographs in the book have been taken by me of the children at my
Hmm.
group, which is what I thought would be great, because it's also a great way of saying thank you to all the parents and the
Yeah.
children who've been coming to my sessions for years. And everyone was so happy to be part of the book, and all the kids and things. And it's going to be quite a fun book. I'm looking forward to seeing it out in print.
Oh,
Obviously,
same
I've seen
here.
all the proofs and things, but it'd be nice to see it in book form.
No,
Um,
that's the bit as well you were saying about the photos you've got are in there. I know the
yes,
ones that I've seen as well. It's nice because that series keeps the photos very real. They're not
yes,
posed
no,
photos
no,
because it
exactly.
shows this is what can happen, you know.
Yes, exactly. And it's amazing. Because all the photographs that I've taken are, and I tend to take a lot of photographs, because the photographs go to the papers, the magazines, to the BBC, etc., etc. And so the children who come to my sessions are aware, and their parents are aware, that all the photographs that are taken at the sessions are going on some media, going to some like
Yeah.
outlet somewhere, and they're aware of it, and they're quite happy for me to do it, which is great, and I'm very grateful to the parents,
Hmm.
because I think picked photographs could speak 1,000 words.
Hmm.
They speak. It's you can have a bit of copy and a photograph, and it just works really well,
Yeah.
because then you can people can understand what you're saying, really. um and But yes, it's going to be fun. There's a lot of experiments in there that have been done so many times in this house, so there's a lot of pictures of my kitchen with the kids in it, but
And I'm
it's
so
good
excited. I cannot wait for this book. So
fun.
if so introducing this into settings, because I know a lot of settings it's like, is this something we can do? What would you recommend in terms of like having that kind of go-to equipment that you could do something with? What kind of things do you think, if we had this box and we need to put some equipment in it, what would you recommend that we put in there?
I would suggest balloons, pipe cleaners, pom-poms, craft sticks, bicarb, vinegar, pipettes, um, lots of kitchen roll. You'd need a lot of that. I've done quite a few fire experiments. I think fire experiments are fun and great. And also I like children to understand that they should never be afraid of fire. They should be safe with
Hmm.
fire, never be afraid, because if you're afraid of fire, then that's where the danger comes, because you don't know how to deal with it. So I kind of tell them not to touch, etc., but
Hmm.
also to watch from a safe distance, but to never be scared and go like, oh, it's fire, I'm going to run away. Just to kind of watch and that sort of thing. We've done things like simple experiments, like climbing water. You put a candle in on a plate, water around it, food coloring in the water, and then you put a cup or a glass over the candle, and then the
Hmm.
water is sucked up. It's quite a well-known experiment, and it's known by many names. I call it climbing water because the
Hmm.
water actually climbs up, and then the candle goes out. And there's a reason for that. Is because of a vacuum seal is created
Hmm.
when the carbon dioxide and everything. So but yeah, so a simple experiment like that, I can get like a 2-year-old doing that experiment once they realize that they're not to touch the flame. So a
Yeah.
2-year-old or a 15-month-old doing that experiment is absolutely mind-boggling for some people because they're like, oh, a baby and fire. It's like, it's safe, don't worry. That baby understands they're not to touch the flame. All you have to do is do not touch. And they don't. They don't. I mean, not one child who's ever come to my house or any of the children I've ever done these experiments with have ever gone out of the way to touch the flame.
Hmm.
None of them have. When you tell them not to do it, they don't do it. They're interested to see what would happen when the glass goes over the flame.
Yeah.
That's what they're interested in, and they want to see the colors mixing because I tend to put 2 different colors. I'd put like a blue and a yellow, and then they see it turn to green. So there's a few elements for them to kind of like go like, oh wow, there's color mixing happening here.
Hmm.
That's really great. So that sort of thing. And then I've done other things where I show them how heat rises and can move objects like a propeller, for example.
Yeah.
And like you have like foil on a pencil, and then the foil goes round because of the heat rising up from 4 tea lights. So little experiments like that, which is really good fun actually. And then there's another one which is one of my favorites, which is wibble wobble balloons. So you ask a child how to get a balloon full of water into a glass jar, and they will say you push it in, and you'll be like, "Is there any other way? Can you think of any other way?" And then they'll say, "What if you fill up the balloon inside the glass jar?" Or various other things. Then you
Hmm.
say, "Okay, we're going to try with fire." And it's like, oh, there's lots of excitement trying with fire. How amazing. So then you tear up a bit of paper towel, stick it into the bottom of the jar, set the paper towel on fire, put the balloon on the top. The balloon then wobbles as the oxygen dies in the bottle in the jar, and then it sucks the balloon full of water into the jar, and
Hmm.
it's just it sits there, and it's quite amazing, and it makes this plop sound, which again kids go like, oh wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Then the other thing that I do with it is that I take the balloon out and I ask the children what would happen if you set the bottom of the balloon alight, a balloon full of water. Now there's all sorts of kind of answers I get. So what do you think would happen? As in, what would you, if you were doing that experiment, what do you think would happen to the balloon if someone set the balloon on fire?
Oh, you say it melt?
Okay. What else do you think might happen to it?
You put me right on the spot. I don't know. Wow.
Okay. So when you set a balloon full of water on fire, nothing happens to the balloon. Absolutely nothing. Do you know why?
Go on. Go on.
It's because the water in the balloon absorbs the heat.
Oh, okay.
So there's nothing that happens to it. Do you think the balloon would be hot to touch or would it be cold to touch?
I'm gonna say then if the water's absorbing it, oh.
Yes, it is actually cold.
Ah! I'm having flashbacks to science experiments in school.
Okay, so what would happen if you set fire to a balloon that has air in it without any water?
That would definitely melt.
It won't melt, it would pop.
Oh,
Do you know why?
I guess the air heats up and expands.
Yes,
Ah,
the air
yes.
heats up. It does. It expands and it breaks through the plastic. So yeah, so that's what happens. And it's interesting to show this to children, because like you, children come up with all sorts of different answers, which is great, which is really amazing.
Mhm.
And that's what you want. You want them to kind of, and then you show them what would happen. And every parent is always amazed when nothing happens to the balloon. They're always like, what, nothing happened to the balloon? They're like, no, nothing happens to the balloon. You can have it hanging over a flame for like a good 5 minutes and nothing will happen to the balloon, and it'll still be cold if it's full of water. Of course, if you do the same thing to a balloon full of air, it'll pop within seconds.
So
So yeah,
exciting.
it is quite a good experiment to do, and kids love it. They absolutely go like, oh, can we do that experiment over and over and over again?
Mhm.
I've done it like a million times.
Oh, amazing. Well, Sandra, time has caught up with us, but this has been brilliant. I can't like I literally want to go into nursery now and start doing
Yeah,
experiments.
you should absolutely.
Oh, this is fantastic. Well, Sandra Beale, thank you so much for being
You're
a
so
guest
welcome.
on the brand new series of Circle Time. It's so wonderful of you. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.